Most people don't think of strategy that way.
Developing a new strategy.
Strategic blind spots.
When strategy meets reality.
Strategy and innovations.
In the strategy world.
Drive their strategic goals.
And welcome back to Strategy Meets Reality podcast. Welcome back to Strategy Meets Reality podcast. I'm delighted today to be joined by David Sloly. It's Sloly, isn't it?
It's Sloly, but that's okay.
Sloly. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all right. Don't apologise.
I keep messing up people's names. I really do apologise.
That's all right, Alan.
It is. Terrible at that. I might just stick to first names. It's great to have you on the show. We got connected by a previous guest, Matt Mullins, who was so kind to introduce us. And we had an initial chat, and I was like, "You'd be fantastic for the show." So, for our guests, do you mind giving a bit of background, a bit of context about yourself?
Yeah, I'll keep it short, but I'll also try and include the important points, which I think will start coming out during the podcast, why they were important points. You'll go, oh, that's why he can talk about that subject. So I started life as a journalist and then went to work in broadcast, and my speciality was radio, which means there were no screens. So the stories you told had to invigorate the imagination because you couldn't show a picture. And then I did go and work in advertising. And then from advertising, I went to work in B2B marketing, which is a much bigger, there would be more of a strategic approach to advertising or to connecting with the audience. And it was very, very much B2B. And then, so 10, 15 years into that, I started my own agency because automation was in the ascendancy at the time, whereas similar to the way AI is now, and started my own agency, which I've been running now for.
Awesome. I mean, it's a fascinating background, and the reason why it struck me was because I am quite skeptical of when you hear like the coaches or consultants talk about storytelling and narratives. They make out, it doesn't matter how bad your strategy is, as long as you can tell a story, you'll execute fine. And I think there's a difference when I was speaking to you about the importance of that storytelling, that narrative, which was really captivating compared to what I'm normally hear about, narratives.
So I saw the power of storytelling. So in broadcast, my first real jobs in radio was working for the first independent production company. And they gave me a tape recorder and a microphone because that's how it rolled back then, and said, go out there and find some stories. Now, I'd studied journalism, so I knew how to find and tell a story, or I thought I did. And I just started drifting into weird and wonderful places. I met a guy that had created a machine that could tell if someone was lying, a lie detector that you could use on your telephone line. And I did an interview with him, and I made this whole feature and made the whole story around someone lying on a telephone call. And it was a bit of fun. And I took it back to my boss, and he loved it. And he got a sponsor on board, and it was sponsored. And it was amazing. I remember cycling home through Shepherd's Bush one day, and a car window was open. And I heard my feature being played out of someone's car radio. And it sort of came home to me that I was crafting, I was making something. And I became fascinated by the power of stories because I was hearing these stories coming out of car radios that were in between them listening to pop music. So I was really studying pop music at the time. How do they work? Oh, they have this intro and then they have a hook. And so I was making my features 3.5 minutes long, and I was following a format, if you like, of pop music. And I found that really worked for commercial radio stations. My first real job in marketing was for Google, and Google were B2B, and they were trying to get hairdressers and all kinds of people to use Google AdWords.
Yeah.
And they were doing it through sending them a promotional code. And every quarter I'd have to go to the Google offices and pitch them something creative, another way of engaging the audience. One of my earlier pitches was, we should tell the stories of the successes. You guys have got the data. Let's tell the stories. And they said, that's a fantastic idea. What do you mean stories? And it all began to sort of piece together in my mind. There's an incredible amount of horsepower, intellectual horsepower in the room of the Google office I'm speaking to. And they're right to ask me, what do you mean by story? And it's like, these are data, guys. Data is true. It is there in the field. You can read it.
Yeah.
Story is subjective. What do I mean? And it was fascinating. They allowed me to go and train. I went and trained as a clinical hypnotherapist so I could understand how words alone could move someone's state of mind. I studied decision-making theory and behavioral economics. All these things were fundamental to create, if you like, this lattice work of which I could demonstrate how a story and why a story changes people's attitudes and the beliefs and the decisions they make from a science point of view. Because without that, Google would like, well, that's nice, but where's the science? So I went through this entire journey, which got me to a point, if you like, where I was able to move away from saying we should use a story to understanding the fundamentals of what we'd need to include in that story in order for it to influence people's attitudes, beliefs, and the decisions they made. So I got to a point where I was hearing other people like you heard saying, oh yeah, we're using stories to influence this. We got a strategy, that'll do. We got to have a good story. And I challenged it by asking, what kind of story do they use?
Yeah.
And they would say, I use the old beginning, middle, and end. Right? They didn't even sort of say Aristotle's 3 acts. It wasn't even that deep. And I began to realize that I think the point I got to, the question, the what if, is that it kind of went back to, as a child, I intrinsically understood when I was being told a story. And I understood stories. But during my schooling, no one ever taught me how to create a story.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
It was just a given that I understood, oh, that's a story. But they never layered how a story is created. And I realized that there's lots of books out there that tell you how to create a story for fiction, how to create, but they are 500-600 pages long. And they're actually very difficult. If you're not a nerd and really interested in beats and how these things work and deconstructing stories to understand how they go back together, if you're not really into that, if you just need a story, they're not helpful. So I thought I need to put together a sort of something that's sub 100 pages that has a process. I like processes. I'm quite a processy kind of guy. I like flow chart. I like process because I can then work to the process. So I created these 5 steps to help people like the person that you mentioned, right, when you open that question to me. They talk about story, but they don't really understand how they're going to, what's the methodology for creating that story. And that's what I went and did. And it took a year. So I thought it'd take a week, and it took a year. It took me a year because trying to make something really simple is actually quite difficult. And I know Tim Cook of Apple famously waved an iPhone and said it takes a lot of effort to make something this simple. And I understood that, okay, it does. Remove every word that doesn't need to be there. Make this something that a busy CEO of a small business can pick up, read, and apply. And that's where I kind of got to. So to answer your question, there's people that are saying they're using story, and you have to go to really understand storytelling. You have to go very deep into the methodologies and the styles and the types of stories, the basic plots, how they move, where they need to pivot. And then you need to bring it all the way up into simplicity so that anyone can grab it and own it.
Yeah. I think that's the key when we're talking about communicating strategy, is that stories are fundamentally to us. And when you're delivering the strategy, the power is in the interpretation. So how do people interpret the direction so that we are reducing the misinformation transfer? And I think sometimes we communicate thinking that just because I've said it, it makes sense to me, it's obviously going to make sense for everybody else. And we want to get that across. And I've always been taught, give clear intent. And, when I was in the military, we structured our intents very clearly. The what by means of how and what success would look like is the 3 components, and it should be no longer than 36 words.
Very good.
Rigid.
Before I'd done any of my career, I really learned about communications from my father, who was also in the military. He was in the RAF Signals. So
Oh yeah.
my father was born and raised in Jamaica and came over to the UK when he was 16 to join the RAF. And so it'd be quite a strange house to grow up in, because it went from clipped English to yes, man. You never quite knew where the conversation was going to land. But what he was very good at, because of his signals training, was communicating to my brother, my sister, and myself, not in a nasty or in a challenging way, but very clear communication. And that could be his love for us, what he wanted us to do, or why we'd done something well, everything. He found the words to communicate it, and he would give you that extra second or two of look to see if it had landed. And if he didn't think it had landed, he could reframe it and deliver it again. To your point, we get things presented to us that the presenter understands. And it's taken as a given that we should understand it because it was presented in a logical flow.
Yeah.
But the struggle, we're human. So when someone is imparting information, their narrative, we're actually running our own narrative in the background. Yeah, but well, that's not what I heard. But I saw something different yesterday. Now, these two narratives are running side by side. So the one we've been presented with is being blurred by a second narrative. So therefore, the information communicated by a presenter to me may not land the first time, not because they're not good at presenting, not because their articulation isn't clear, not because their proposition and their framing and their delivery isn't perfect. It's because I have an imagination and thoughts, and I can't stop them. And if they're communicating to me, they're firing up and going. So with anything we're presenting, we need to take a leaf out of my dad's book and stop and look him in the eye. Did it land? And then reframe it and run at it once again. I realized as I was answering that first question of yours, I could start talking about my methodology, the 5 basic steps. But I thought if I roll with that, it's just foggy. I'm just delivering fog now. Message on top of message on top of message. Stop there. Let's move to the next thing. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to come back to the 5 basic steps that enable anyone to create a story, a narrative. And I'll use the word narrative because some people find stories as something that's made up and not true. And we need to differentiate that from authentic to fictional.
Yeah, true. And I'd like to explore the process, but that thing you mentioned a moment ago about, your dad would look people in the eye to see if it landed. I think that's such an underused skill because we're too quick to just send emails or, now we've got, Asana, we've got all these tools now, Slack, to communicate, but they involve communication without the person in front of them.
So how does it land?
Yeah, how does it land? And I think that's so good if you get your people in and you can tell the narrative of what you're doing and why we're doing it and look people in the eyes to see, has it landed?
Yeah.
I think that's such a crucial thing to do.
When you're watching a movie, it's escapism. So you allow, it's a film, you allow it to wash over you. And before you know it, you find yourself as if you are role-playing how you would respond to certain situations, which is why we get drawn into stories, the narratives. We imagine ourselves as the hero. I've never waved a sword around on a ship, but I could imagine myself in Pirates of the Caribbean when I'm watching it, and I'll almost flinch, I would do this and I would do that. So I wouldn't. Whereas when we send an email, it's just going to land when someone's doing something else. So I have a policy. When I send an email, one message in the email. So the headline in the subject box and then the message. Succinct as possible. If I've got another message I need to communicate to them, I'll send a second email with that one in the. So it makes it easier for them to fish it out later if they need to find it. And they can act on one thing. They can't act on 2 at the same time. And why should I why should I hold them for two actions on my behalf when one is what I'll be happy if I'm doing one and one a bit later.
Yeah, that's cool. So I like that. So what's the process?
Yeah, thank you for asking. So, as I said, I wanted to keep the process as simple as possible, as actionable as possible, and I'm going to point you at a place where you can download the book. It's free of charge, and that process is in there. But I'll walk you through it. It goes 5, 4, 3, 2. 5 is the 5 views. The 5 views are the who, what, why, when, where. They are not the story, but they're the questions you need to ask to get the information that is the raw material of your story. Who is it about? What happened? Why did it happen? When did it happen? Where did it happen? They're your fundamentals. Who, what, why, when, where. And you write those down first. And then you move to the next one, which is the 4 Ps. So we had the 5 Ws, who, what, why, when, where. The 4 Ps. And the 4 Ps are princes, purses, pets, and places. When I was studying as a journalist, it was with the BBC, and they used to second you off to different places to help you go into new directions. And I was sent to work for 2 days with an editor at The Guardian. And it was fascinating. And it was him that said it to me. People are only interested in 4 things: princes, purses, pets, and places. And I scratched my head, I'm a new guy on the block then. I'm like, but people are interested in all kinds of things. No, a prince is anyone you can name, but you don't need to explain. Anyone or anything. So Google is a prince. Prince Charles is a prince. David Beckham is a prince. It goes on. Anyone you can name, you don't need to explain, is a prince. So you go back to your 5 Ws and you say, is there a prince? So maybe you're writing a case study and your client, delivers for Virgin Atlantic. Okay, there's a prince. Princes. Are there any princes you can talk about? Second one is purses. Purses relates to finance. We're obsessed with numbers, big numbers, small numbers, house prices going up, house prices coming down. So are there any numbers in there that are big or small? They could be percentages. When we finished this, 72% of people said it was a success. Well, when our client made their investment, they got 100% return on investment. When any numbers, big or small, it only costs them 6 pence per lead. Small number, but a big story. So princes first, anyone you can name you don't need to explain. Purses, money, princes, purses, pets. We're obsessed with pets in the West. They don't fit into everyone's story, so you either is in or it isn't in. But pets are incredibly important to us. We care more about our own pets than we do about our neighbours. So
I've got my dog right here.
Brilliant. You've got your dog right there. I wish I had your dog right here with me now. And now you'll start to, anyone that says poppycock, start to check your news bulletins, start to check how it ends with pets. Look at that pet story and go, what was either side of it? Big news, pet. Anywhere they can get a pet story in, they know it. Pets, incredibly important. Princes, purses, pets, and places. Places, they say that if you find yourself in a foreign country, you are more likely to trust someone who comes from your same town than you are to trust the locals from the country. Even though that person from the town you came from could be a criminal, you're just more likely to trust them because they came from the same place. So it's a strange phenomenon, but it's true. So here's the thing, especially if they relate to the audience, but also places that conjure images in people's minds. I only have to say Christmas in New York. And you got it, right? A Caribbean sunset, and you're there. I don't need to start describing. Imagine waking, it's like, I got it, a Caribbean sunset. I know Christmas in New York. I know it. It cuts you right through to the bone. So that's the 4 Ps. Princes, purses, pets, and places. You go back over your 5 Ws and you start to put those in. It's still not the story. They're just the raw materials. Now we move it to start structuring it into a story framework. Aristotle talked about the 3 acts. Act 1, the first act, is the challenge. A story without a challenge isn't really a story. A man that, Mike loses his dog, turns around and there's his dog. That's not a story. Mike loses his dog. Heaven forbid, I hope this never happens.
Oh no!
And goes hunting for his dog and is led on a journey to the Highlands of Scotland through the cold of winter and finds his dog on a peak at 2:00 in the morning and hugs him. That's a story. Yeah, that's a story.
Like
and on that journey, you would no doubt go through some changes. You'd reflect and all these things. You'd become a new Mike Jones. Yeah. That's transformation, which story does. So the 3 acts, the first one is the challenge. The story must have a challenge. So what is the challenge? The second is the struggle. Most case studies I read are the challenge, everything that went really well, and we'll come to the resolve, the third act 3 in a moment, but it's like everything that goes really well. That's lovely, but the measure of a company sending me a case study is about how they dealt with the things that didn't go well. Yeah, the problem's not the problem, it's how they handled the problem. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see something that didn't go well. And then I'll know if they're the kind of people I can work with. Because I know when they're working with me, something's going to go wrong. It does. It's just going to go wrong. So you've got these 3 acts. Act 1, the challenge. Act 2, the struggle. Yeah. And Act 3, the resolve. What did we learn from going through the challenge and the struggle? That's the real resolve. And that could be we learned that this process gives you a 20% uplift on ROI. We learned that trying to shortcut and hack it isn't the way to build it. We had to go back to fundamentals and design from the ground up. We learned that strategy isn't a list of to-dos.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Don't get delivery. We're going to come to the strategies in a minute. So you've got these 3 acts. So now you take your 5 Ws, which have got your 4 Ps laced into it. Act 1, what was the challenge? Who, what, why? Why did we do this? We did this because that's the challenge. There we go. There's the challenge. You probably get the when in there as well. It's 2025. We did and then you've got go on.
I can see this quite easy when you communicate in that sense, because you've got the challenge. The challenge is normally the challenge that we're facing now. The struggle is against what are the difficult decisions, where and when and how we're going to get to this point, and the resolve. I suppose when you're talking to communicate strategy, the resolve isn't there, but what you hope to resolve
is the vision.
Is there. Yeah, the vision. Yeah, so you've got that whole journey there, quite easy. And I think I like that idea of the acts, especially the struggle, because I think there's a lot of over optimism in strategy communication.
You could put the SWOT analysis right in the struggle. What's the struggle going to be? Well, these are our strengths, this is our weaknesses, this is the opportunity. You can just bake those right in. And then, so that's the 3 acts. Now you've got your 3 acts laid out. And then you moved, so we've done 5 Ws, 5, 4 Ps, 4, 3 acts, 3. Now the 2, better do it that way, 2. So the 2 is the 2 states. A story relies on moving between 2 states. And I'll do this bit quite slow because authentic stories do the same. And it's difficult for us to believe that would be the case. The 2 states are what is on will go off. What is good will go bad. What is a win will become a loss. And if you look at any project you've worked on, you'll see it actually starts mapping that way. The client says we'll do it. The client changes their mind. You present something new, they don't like it. You try again, they love it. You start to deliver and realize you've got this block and you need to overcome that. Up, down, up, down. You pick up any decent fiction book, and if the chapter ends down, it's going to move to up on the next one. That's how narratives flow. And it happens in real life. You could look at the last property you bought. It wasn't just, I said, we'll take it. They said, where's the money? They gave them the money and they gave me the keys. It won't be that. Yeah, there'll be this on, off, up, down, good, bad. So now you look at your story particularly in that struggle area, and you look at how it actually organized, and you start to allow it to go up. You tell the story of, and we won the pitch. We were so stoked. We all went out for a celebration, And then the next day, the client said, we're changing the brief. Down we go.
Yeah.
And we couldn't figure out a way of changing that brief. And then Steve phoned me at 2:00 in the morning. He sent me a message at 2:00 in the morning. So I cracked it. And up we went. We had we presented it to the brief. We presented it back to the client. And the client said, we love it, but we did that exact same thing last year. You know, that's kind of how it goes, right?
No.
You don't need to invent them. Be authentic. They're in there. I've never met a business leader. I've never met anyone in marketing. I've never met anyone in any industry that when I've unpacked their story with them hasn't had the up, down, the two states. So you take the state up and then you bring it down. Those two states of emotion keep us emotionally engaged in the story. Yeah. Stops it being a boring story. So that's the two states. And the last one, the one is the one killer headline. We don't always need a headline for a story, but it may be a talk you're giving. It may be a presentation. It may be an email you're sending. Yeah. And you got a subject line. And I got obsessed with this because also as part of my training, we studied headlines. How do you create a headline? And there's only 3 types of headline that exist. There's the promise. It promises something. Cure for baldness found. There's the intrigue. It intrigues you. Man bites dog. Got a lot of pets going on here, yeah? And so there's the, what did we say there was? What was the first one we said? There's the promise, the intrigue, and the third one is news, which by definition is new and interesting. Humans land on Mars. Yeah? So you're going to create a headline from this, and it's got to be one of those 3. So when you look at your headline, you go, is it a promise, an intrigue, or news? And then you've got this one killer headline. So if you were doing it for your strategy, which closes with the vision, it's going to have this one headline that draws people in. And this is also for if you're doing pitches, you know, there could be 3 or 5 other people pitching. And they tend to take all the pitches and discuss them, but they tend to hang on to the title. They address them each time by the title. If your title's 46 words long and really complex, they'll stop talking about your work because they cannot recall the title.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I know that because I used to do a lot of pitching for a marketing agency, and I'd go all over the world doing these pitches. And my thing was make sure the title is so memorable that they'll forget everyone else and remember our title. And I'd drum that title home all the way through. So when they see me, I'm discussing it afterwards, mine's the easiest one to say. And it's a psychology thing, right? So that's the 5 steps to creating a narrative.
Okay. I like it. I can see there's a lot we do in futures, and in futures we talk about storytelling is really important in that because they don't exist, and you create the plausible scenarios, and in those you will create the stories. So there's heroes, there's villains, you know, there's it's not all dystopian. There is good and bad, and I suppose I was reflecting on that, and that's that state change you're talking about. Actually, it's not all bad, it's not all good, and actually those state changes are quite useful because when people are telling stories about the future, I find they're either all purely utopian or they're purely dystopian.
Yeah,
they haven't got that reality of the state change that you go through.
Yeah, and I just want to say something about narrative stories. You don't have to have the story yet. You can do a vision story. So you can do exactly the same with the who, what, why, when, where. And you can do exactly the same with the Princess Percy's Pets and Places. And you can do exactly the same with the 3 acts. Only now you're layering in what that vision is going to be, what is going to happen on that journey. Now, it may not play out exactly as that, but without the vision story, it's difficult for people to grasp what the change will look like and how the change will come about.
Yes, and that's key when you're giving direction. You want people to remember it because there's no point when that's the thing when they're there enacting the strategy, they are dealing with so many different tensions, challenges that you want them. So when they are making those choices, they are making those choices in line with the intent, not anything else. And you see strategies. I get sent strategies to read all the time, and they are normally woeful and boring and not strategy.
So let's. Oh, sorry, Carrie. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, so I don't know how people don't remember them. So they say they've got a strategy, and then they send it out to people, and people don't read it. It's not memorable. It's quite generic. So people just go back and do what they want anyway.
So let's see. I've given you narrative. Have we got time? Maybe we see if we can align narrative and strategy to see.
Yeah, we got time.
Okay, so let's go back up the chain. I've got a question for you. Let's go right to the top. What is a strategy?
What is a strategy? It's really key. Well, there's really two elements when we look at strategy. So one is the identity of the organization. So that needs to be there. So
Yeah,
I term that as the grand strategy. So you have what the organization actually is, its identity, its ethos, its constraints, it's all the things from past decisions that have got you to what you are. Now, this is really crucial because if you don't understand that, then you won't understand what is afforded to you in strategy. And your identity or your grand strategy is really important for that. Strategy, therefore, the other part, the act, and I suppose there's a difference. The act of doing strategy is how an organization continuously interprets, adapts, and acts within its environment to sustain advantage and maintain viability. So that's like the act of strategy. What is a strategy? That is a sense that what is the effect that you're trying to have on the external environment that you're in.
So we talk. You are just taking notes because I really I will listen back to this podcast, but I do also want. I really am to achieve effect. So we talk. We know what a bad strategy is. We get this list of bullet points to do things. What's a good strategy? What would you look at and go, that's a good strategy? What is it that you draw a circle around and go, that's why it's good?
Well, there's quite a lot. So there's a good strategy. It all depends on the context. Say, for instance, I'll go. So we had the client and they were part of a huge technological program that they needed to do. But the problem is the way that they got structured in the environment was that it was consensus madness. They couldn't make any decision about what needed to be done, and it means that they were failing. They weren't getting that advantage. So when they'd done the strategy, it was came very clear that to remain viable, as we're talking about, they needed to change the dynamic of that relationship to lead and shape. So their strategy was about how do we move from being very static, can't do anything, to how do we change it so that we are actually leading and shaping the decisions of that ecosystem.
So that's a good strategy, yeah?
Yeah, for them.
For them. But it's a sentence almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that becomes very memorable.
Clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we align storytelling to strategy, because I just think there may be other people like me that think a strategy is 40 slides.
Yeah.
Without ever really having that top line, that articulation of understanding of this is what we were trying to achieve, but understanding why they're trying to achieve it. And I thought that was a really clear sense of purpose that you just described there, that anyone could embody and understand the part they're going to play in achieving that strategy. So if you align that to narrative, because I think the hard thing for a strategist is to just go back with that line and go, does that land? Right, my work here is done. Don't forget to pay my invoice. It's like people who come up with strap lines and propositions and logos, They go, okay, so the logo's a tick. How much am I paying you? I think actually she got paid $25 for that. But
she did.
Yeah.
Apparently went back and on to do with shares in the end. Yeah.
She now lives on a beach, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
Big numbers, small numbers, right? Purses. Yeah. Story we both heard. Neither of us could probably remember her name. I think it's Karen something. Is it Karen Davies that did the original tick? But,
I don't know. Anyway, I can't remember her name.
But to your point, if you're just going with that sentence, they're going to go, why am I paying you thousands of pounds for a single sentence? So you have to show them all the working out and how you got there. And I think the part that where narrative works for strategists is showing them how that will take them from where they are the place they don't want to be to where they want to be, and how it plays a continual part in the narrative. And you could follow, I did it for insurance company, and they had some very awkward ways of making customers interact with them through legacy. It made it very difficult. We've all had a difficult experience with a telephone system, be it an insurance company, a bank, or one of those. It was very difficult. And they wanted me to bring that to life. And the story, the long and short of it is, I got the CEO to take a step forward when everything was going well, and turn right and take a step to the right when he hit the wall, when it wasn't working. And within 5 moves into it, the room was roaring with laughter, and the CEO was standing facing an actual wall, which I knew would happen. And that just dramatized it and drilled home the story that we need to make change here, and enabled him to start the journey for us all to make the change that was required around their operations. So for strategy, you kind of go, I've got my idea. How do I take them on that journey? What do I want to show them? Is it how that department will start behaving differently? Is it, whatever, you've got 101 things, I'm sure, in each strategy. And then you tell that story. And the differences between showing them slides with numbers and telling that story is when someone shows me the numbers or starts telling me what they're going to do, my guard immediately goes up. I'm guarded, because they're coming at me with something. When someone says, I want to tell you a story of how we see this, our guard drops. We have a natural curiosity. We've grown up since children hearing stories that do not hurt us. They enlighten us. They take us on journeys. They're incredible. They give us imagination. They educate us. They do everything. And our guard drops. So when you say, as a strategist, let me take you on the journey, and rather than take them on dot points on a Gantt chart of deliverables, take them on that journey. And obviously some of it's going to be unknown unknowns, but they'll understand that. This is our scenario. And you'll put the struggles in there as well. We know struggles have to be in there. We may struggle to get the systems updated to be able to perform this new task, but we overcome that. And that moves us on, and take them on that story. And that enables them. And I talked about, I have never been a swashbuckling pirate of the Caribbean, but my arms twitch when I watched that film with my son years ago. And I noted that. And it's because we become the hero in the story. So when you're telling them this story and they're the hero in it on that journey, they'll be deciding how they would make decisions as you're telling that story.
Yes.
They own it then.
And that's a really crucial thing, because often what gets confused in this strategy and why it becomes also cumbersome is that they start to define stuff that is unknown, and they start to go too far, too many levels down into detail, and it removes the agency from people, where actually you can say, well, this is what we need to do, lead shape. For that, you're not telling them how to do things. You go, we need you to, this is what we need you to do. This is what we need you to do. And I suppose you bring that into a story like you're talking about. The challenge is quite clear. You can talk about the challenge now. You can talk about the struggle, and the struggle could then start to include, the various functions or teams as a struggle being, what the challenge for them is, not what you want them to do. And then the resolve, we'll know that we are doing this and we are working because we would start to see these things. And I think that in what I'm trying to get people to look at in strategy is we get too internalized, and we think the strategy is being done by the outputs that we do, the busyness that we create. Really, the strategy is won by we look externally to see if our efforts are starting to change our relationship with the external environment. So we should see, if we're doing these things, we should see these things.
And there's no reason. Sorry.
Not just activities. It's got to be with meaning. If you can see these things, you can bring that nicely into as you've explained, using your structure. you could bring that to a really clear narrative that
All
makes
three
them feel part of
narratives.
it.
This is possible. This is probable. This is, worst case. But you could deliver your narratives in there, so they are not locked to one narrative. That they may be. Remember, we're all running our own narratives all the time. They may be going, John will never do that, and as for Sarah, he's not changing system. Okay. Narrative 2, probable, changing their behaviours. That's really tough. Let's say they don't. What's the workaround? We create this workaround, and then you've got them back in the room.
Yeah. I can even see with those narratives and stories, you could even, I like to sometimes bring in the reality of what it's like in that organisation I'm working with, because you get to know them, right? I almost become part of them. That's part of my thing, because I hopefully try to remove the fact that they forget, they stop seeing me as a consultant, and I'm almost like one of them. But you know the stories because what they tell themselves. So you know that we're going to struggle with this because typically we would do this. We don't normally follow through with things, but you can, like you said, do your phase change. Yeah, so you can really bring in the actual truisms of the organisation.
Yeah, which is even more powerful. In places, right? You could talk about.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we're in the the accountants pod, and we're talking to them, and then it also, when you start mapping it out as a narrative, you start to see the questions that aren't answered. So you go, well, hang on a minute, we're going to hit this problem. Will the finance team adopt that? Well, let me ask them.
Yeah.
Let me ask them.
Yeah.
What's the last software they changed and adopted to? Did they hack it and do workarounds? Did they adopt it fully or not? And you got there when you're telling your narrative, that becomes part of it. So your recipient is going, okay, they won't adopt all of it, but if they adopted 80% of the last software that was implemented, so we're going to take it that the worst case they'll adopt 60 of this change. And 60% would get that outcome, so we're okay. And it just helps us build realistic playbooks.
Yeah, I like the idea of sort of the incompleteness. I talk about strategic ambiguity a lot, and actually ambiguity is not a bad thing in the sense that there always is going to be ambiguity, and it's not something to shy away from or try to have all the answers, because that ambiguity gives optionality to people to explore and to experiment. I suppose in your narrative, if you've got gaps, I quite like the idea that there is gaps, and that people will ask me questions. Well, what about this? And I'll be like, well, who's the I suppose it won't be Prince, but who's the person for that story? And you can ask them.
Yeah.
Well, what would you do?
Yeah. And then, wow, that also, when you bring people into the story, when they are adding to it, they used to call it in advertising blue ships. So they used to say, we make the image, we take it into the client in the pitch, but in that image, I want you to put a blue ship, or just something that shouldn't be there. And the client looks in and says, I like it. I'm not sure about the blue ship in it. And you go, you're right. If we took the blue ship out, it'd be perfect, wouldn't it? And they go, yeah. And it's that IKEA factor, isn't it? They've contributed to it. So they've added value to it. So therefore, they have now bought into it. So the ambiguity creates the space for opportunity. You go, I don't know what will happen here. Hey, that makes you look like an incredibly trustworthy person. You're not just bridging across it with something made up because you don't want to admit ambiguity. Ambiguity is great. It enables opportunities. What's the opportunity in this gap? Who could we bring in? Who would best solve it? What could it also reveal? What else could happen? What threats are there? And it just brings them right into, and then when they're giving it, you're adding that in. Now they have ownership. They have skin in the game.
And that's what you want, because you're not, and I see this too often, that senior leadership teams try to solve the whole strategy at their level and their thing, and they wonder why it's not achievable in that sense. Where if you're giving that good direction to people, the agency comes in, they get invested by the fact that they have got an element of their skill, their capability, that you're trusting them to execute that. You're not telling them how to do it. You're asking them, And this is the challenge we have. This is the struggle we're going to have. Like, and you're inviting them to go, what can you do to help us resolve this? And you're bringing in that narrative and inviting in them for the conversation. I think that's.
And it's capturing it as a narrative as well. Too often we capture everything. When we replay it to them, we're doing it as this list of bullet points. Whereas we want to replay it, try and bake it. If we've got a fast way, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, they can have a tea break and you can bake it into a quick narrative, what they've said.
Yeah.
The who, what, why, when, where, shuffle those around. Okay, any princess, purses, pets, places? No. Right, move on. Let's put it into the 3 acts. So what we're looking at doing is this, and tell it back as the narrative. And it helps when, we, in our DNA, literally built right into us, we understand narrative when it's presented as narrative. We understand it. So when you present it back to them as the challenge, the struggle, the resolve, you don't need to explain yourself. You never need to say, first, let's start with the challenge. Now let's move. It's not required. You just say the thing and they know that's the challenge. Disney films don't start by saying within 8 minutes, you'll know the challenge of this film. Then it will move to an hour and 10 minutes of struggle. And then there'll be 15 minutes of resolve, in which time your parents will get up and make a cup of tea. During the resolve, because they're just not interested in it.
Yeah. I think once you get used to it, it's like when we learn to construct intents. You would always start with, you write the how, but then you don't need to. You just flow straight into it. So now it's so baked in. You just go this. You say what by means of how and why. You don't need to say the headings. But it's such. Even now, we've only just spoke about this very briefly, but already that definitely 3 acts. Like, I just see the value of that structure when you're trying to communicate the strategy to people, because there is the element, there's the layer of this is what we're doing, but then there's that I think there's a lot to be said for a leader or a team that can stand up to to an audience of people and without any slides or anything like that can confidently explain the strategy from start to finish.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's required, is being able to stand up and explain the strategy. We are here. This is the strategy. And this is what the journey will look like. I think the questions at the end from the audience will be a lot more interesting as well, because they'll see the part, they'll feel the part they're going to play. And that's the thing, isn't it? The challenge isn't you coming up with strategy. I'd say the harder piece of work is communicating that to the client in a way that lands, they understand it and they can sign off on.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than them saying, email me the strategy, Mike, and I'll email it on to my boss. That's killer, isn't it? It's like, well, that's not going to work. So the strategy isn't just what it says. It's how does it, when you present it, how will it make them feel? Because they'll forget a lot of what you're saying, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. So if you walk into that room and tell them the story where they're coming off the back of it and they feel great and they feel like the strategy is now possible and they've visualized themselves at that end game in that new place, they've visualized it, that's incredibly powerful on its own if they've seen it in their own minds and they're now feeling great. You're much more likely to get the green light and move towards delivering it.
I think, and with your people, because you stick to the 3 acts, one thing that I rarely see in any strategy documents that I'm presented with or strategy that I'm giving is what is it that at the end, what has changed? We talk about when the smoke clears is a military term in the sense that we always communicate, like give the intent. When the smoke clears, this is what we're going to meaningfully see different. And I think that's always missing in the strategy. All it then gets perceived as is loads of actions.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that brings that. And if you think in a narrative sense, they've been told a challenge and they're like, that's cool. We know that. We've got the struggles. Yeah, we can kind of get that. But I think we're always missing that resolve at the end where, well, this is meaningfully what's going to be different. So I think people then stay in that fractured state because they go, well, I know loads of stuff, but I don't think they realise what the end state is meant to look like.
And they need to stand in their own shoes in that end state to feel if that's where they want to be. And if you've taken them on a journey there to that end state, then they'll understand the journey is possible. If you just take someone to an end state, they won't believe they can get delivered at that end state. You could ask someone to sit down and imagine themselves as a billionaire flying in their own private jet, and they can imagine that.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you took them on a journey of how they get there, that's the difference. That's the change of state they need to see.
Yeah. We explore this stuff with clients when we're doing the strategy, because the fun thing with strategy is that it's not happened, right? You know, it's not happened. It's an imagined future state.
Yeah.
Because it's not either you haven't done it or no one's done it, and you know it's a imagined future state, which is really exciting. But we always ask them, like, if you were to go this way, and we always talk about strategy as trajectory, not an end state. It's not a defined end state, it's trajectory. But like, if you were to go this way, would you like what you become?
That's great. Yeah. Yeah.
And that links back to what I was saying about the two parts. There's the identity of the organization. What is the organization? And the strategy will seize those opportunities, take those affordances and all that. But at the end of it, what that does is it develops or adapts or improves your identity. So you've got to be happy that if you go this way and you take this strategy and you take those affordances, are you going to be happy with what you become?
And can a so I've heard a lot of different strategies, and I like the ones that don't talk about we will become this turnover.
No.
What is it they should be looking for with a strategy?
Well, all that turnover and all that stuff, that's an outcome. So it's an effect. And this is where a lot of times people get confused with strategy. They talk about strategy as a list of effects, i.e. we will, be, we'll get 10% growth. We will have happier clients, or their effects. The strategy is, what are you doing to then will enable those effects to emerge? And that's the difference. That their effects, that's what's going to happen if you enact this strategy, or even better. So I think they confuse. They go, we're going to be this. Okay, that's an effect. What are you actually doing? What meaningfully changes are you taking to enable those effects to appear? And
so the strategy starts with, what are you doing to enable those effects to emerge? So you go back and you find out, first of all, this is what they want. This is what they want to be, this turnover, that many people, whatever it is. And so that gives you a real opportunity then to create a narrative. What are you doing to enable these effects to emerge? That's a challenge right there. We're at that point. So so strategies is fertile ground for narrative. Yeah. I think there is obviously a few challenges to overcome. One is that stories are sometimes seen as something for children, not for the boardroom. They have no place in the P&L. So I often talk about narratives, or I don't talk about it at all, which because I learned the hard way that CEOs said it right to my face. We don't really want stories in the boardroom. Well, I understood what they meant. They thought stories were lies and what children tell.
It's the same with me in my discipline. Like, the first rule of systems thinking is not to mention systems thinking. It's like don't mention it. It's like with a lot of times, like with culture, I always say to people, we need culture. I was like, first thing with culture is don't mention culture. As soon as you mention culture, and I think it's these embedded words, isn't it? As soon as you mention culture, as soon as you mention things, people have a preconceived idea about what that means.
Yeah.
And it ruins the whole actual skill and utility of it.
Yeah. So what are you doing to enable these effects to emerge? That's strategy.
Yeah. In the simplest thing, it's that it's a continuous. And I think this is the problem. People see it as a very static thing. At the end of the year, we've started the new year, we've got a new strategy, and we're going to enact this. And normally that strategy isn't a strategy.
Yeah.
It's just really they've just gone through that existential question about who we are, and they're not actually. It's not actual strategy. It's just more about an identity question. But really, it's that ongoing orientation, that observation of the external environment, your relationship with it, and your continuous adaptation. So the relationship is there. So as you are enacting this part, that enacting is you're building new capabilities, and as you're doing that, then you're going to have different things afforded to you that you didn't have from your original dispositional state.
And what about, because quite often I think that gets mixed up with mission statements, propositions. How do they sit in this?
Yeah,
I'll dismiss them.
I just dismiss them.
Right, fine. I'll take
yeah,
that.
pretty much. Yeah. So I think there's this whole thing where we've gone from, and I'm writing this in the book, where we've gone from strategy is a way of being and thinking and sensing, responding to. Over time, we've come to this thing by strategy being a thing, an artifact. So you ask someone, "Do you have a strategy?" They'll say, "Yes, I have it here," and that's the problem.
Yeah.
And this is where the whole vision, purpose statements, and all that come. Well, they don't mean nothing, because all they are is what I call organizational disassociation.
I like
so they
that.
create a narrative, and this is my problem when I said at the beginning of the show I was challenging around the storytelling, is because they've gone and made a story about what they think they are, not what they are. So they create this disassociation from reality and what they project, and so all those things are just become not very useful artifacts. But really, I want to know what you are, what's your identity, what capability do you have, so we can understand the dispositional state, and from that point then I can understand what's afforded to you, because the relationship has to be there between the organization and the strategy, because the strategy then informs changes to the organization, but the organization limits what's possible in the strategy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can't have ambition. It just means that it's not linear. You can't just go that way. You've got to go, well, we need to do this bit first, take these opportunities first, and then options will be open to us.
Excellent. Yeah, a good learning there. And I think it was lovely to hear strategy articulated so clearly.
Hope so. I'll probably get those people send me abuse on this. No, that's not strategy.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it seems to have turned into so many different things. But what I like about what you're saying is it's not the list of to-dos. And I keep getting strategy. I don't keep.
Yeah.
Every now and then I'll see another strategy. You go, this is our strategy. How will marketing dovetail into that strategy? You go, well, that's a list of things you're going to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's going to tick some of them and not others, but that's not really a strategy.
Yeah. No, it's not saying how you're going to change
Yeah.
the nature of the relationship with the external environment. And the thing is, it's those lists of stuff that they're doing are actions, and they're probably good actions, but it's not clear what ends. Like, why are you doing those actions? What are you hoping to achieve? What is the sort of end result of doing those? And they don't really have it. They just go, we're just going to do those things, and then they come up with this. What I hate is the Greek villa, which is the
with the 3 pillars, the messaging
vision
house.
vision, pillars, and the behaviours.
the foundation.
I see that.
Yeah,
I see that. I'm like, close the book straight away. Right, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's been fascinating, and you have really got me excited about how to merge in narratives into strategy and how actually useful. And it brings me back really to thinking about the strategists of old, how they would have used this to help communicate.
Yeah.
But before we leave, what would you like listeners to, go away and think about from this episode? So
we don't use enough narratives when we're communicating, particularly in business. And I mentioned that a lot of, there can be this thought that, particularly in the boardroom, that narratives, stories are for children. They're not for the P&L. They're not for the boardroom. And then look around you at the companies. Apple got where it is because of Steve Jobs. He saved it from the ashes. And what did he do? He was a great orator. Look at OpenAI. What is Sam Altman? he tells fantastic stories. People actually say that you feel like you're on a magic carpet when you're with Sam Altman. And then when you leave, you realize he was moving forward and you were static all the time, right?
Yeah.
Great. The power of stories, of narrative. You can be authentic and honest, but when you use them, you can communicate, you can help people, and you can communicate so much more clearly. Underpinned with how you make people feel when you tell it. Are you making them feel motivated? Are you making them feel happy? Are you making them feel that it's possible? What are you making them feel? And I'd say if you're interested in that and you've got it and you kind of go, I get that, then look at archetypes. Archetypes is the next layer. What is the character and what do they stand for? And you can see archetypes in business. You can see archetypes within the people within your business and your customers. What are their archetypes and what will resonate with them? And I quite often do that. I look at a customer I'm going to be working with or a prospect, and I figure out their archetype and I try to figure out how they like to receive information. And I don't do that to be underhand or to try and get one up on them. I do that because I want to do something that makes I want to remove the friction between what they need and them receiving it and acting on it. So that's what I'd say. Go away and think about that.
Yeah. I like it. And bringing a bit of Clausewitz in there about friction, which is always good. I think that's the important part. And I keep saying to leaders all the time, it is no good if you understand the strategy and no one else does.
Yeah.
Because it's not you that's enacting the strategy. It's someone else. And I think that ability to communicate succinctly so that, people interpret it and understand, and more importantly, feel that they can act. I think that's crucial.
Yeah.
So I'm sold, mate. Thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. It's been fantastic to have you on.
Thank you for inviting me, Mike. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
Take care.
Bye.